All right. So good morning, everybody. With protocols been established, I would like to go straight into my presentation and to express sincere apologies on behalf of my governor, Governor Antoine, who was unable to attend the conference this year. That notwithstanding, he has asked to convey best wishes to the organizers, the attendees, the participants, and all who, in whatever form, would have contributed to the success of the conference. My role this morning is to share some thoughts on the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank digital currency, as well as the Caribbean Settlement Network. The discussions that we're having in relation to central bank digital currency and the settlement network are very timely. However, we think that it should be done not in isolation, but in relation to the payments and settlement system. In other words, to address a central bank digital currency and a regional settlement network is to respond to developments that are taking place in our payments and settlement system. What then is the payment and settlement system? And as the name suggests, it is any system that is used to settle financial transactions through the transfer of monetary value. The payment system is regarded as integral to a country's financial architecture. And more importantly, it has been agreed that a safe, efficient, and robust payment system is essential in promoting financial stability. A smooth functioning payment system can render a positive contribution to economic activity by providing the markets with mechanisms that allow transactions to be carried out efficiently, frictionless, safely between agents, and this engenders confidence in the financial system and promotes financial stability and ultimately economic growth. Now, having said that, it is therefore no mystery why most central banks, if not all, assume responsibility for the payment system within the jurisdiction. As it relates to payment system, central banks are concerned with financial stability. They are concerned with the efficiency of payments, how quickly payments can happen, the security of the payment instrument used by the public, whether it be a check, whether it be a sovereign currency. And they're also concerned with the public confidence in the payment system. ECCB's role in the payment system is no different to that of other central banks. And this role is defined as being multifaceted. The ECCB, Central Bank Digital Currency, and the CSN fall in two main pillars of the payment and settlement system. Those of us who are familiar with it, the CBDC falls in the retail aspect of the payment system. And the CSN, to a certain extent, can fall into the large value aspect of the payment system. So therefore, the decision to explore opportunities in the respective payment system components signals the view that there is need for greater efficiency in the payment system. Governor Antoine would have remarked, and I quote, "When we survey our current payment landscape, we cannot help but conclude that payments are still too slow and too expensive. Although a full scale of the analysis of physical cash in the ECCU has not been carried out, it is indisputable that the cost of cash services, inclusive of transporting, storing, and securing, are extremely high," end quote. Such a realization would explain the rationale behind ECCB's decision to embark on the introduction of a digital currency in the financial space. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank digital currency is really a digital version of the sovereign fiat currency. The central bank's approach is to introduce the central bank digital currency firstly through a pilot phase in the first instance. The pilot will assist the central bank in undertaking a comparative assessment of certain issues currently encountered in the payment space, in the payment system. Issues such as the relatively high cost of current payments and banking services, the inadequacy to address the needs of various profile customers, that is the unbanked mostly, and the inefficient settling of transactions, of check transactions, which slows the pace of commerce, and sometimes a check can take 5 days to clear, which is highly inefficient. But these only represent a few of the major concerns that the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the currency region, encounters, given its geographical configuration of one central bank and many sovereign currencies, as was indicated by Mr. Adams in his presentation this morning. Therefore, the pilot project has focused on 3 components. 1, the development, issuance, and distribution of a digital currency. In that, ECCB is creating a securely minted digital version of the EC dollar using distributed ledger technology, but namely a private permission-based IBM Hyperledger fabric as the blockchain. The digital currency will operate alongside the EC currency and have near instantaneous real-time processing with settlement finality. The IBM Hyperledger fabric was selected as the blockchain platform because of its strong security architecture and open source, which contributes to its security, flexibility, scalability, among other desired attributes. The second component is developing a mechanism for payments and transfer, and in that, a real-time payment system to transfer digital currency through digital wallets via one of many channels. And these would be the smartphones, your tablets, or your personal computer. Pilot participants will use the digital currency for the conduct of transaction and payments within the ECCU in the initial stages. And the third component, which is also important to us, is incorporating the Know Your Customer AML CFT application solution as part of the blockchain-based system infrastructure. And in that, we could not afford to not entertain the whole regulative aspect. And so therefore, we have to incorporate the KYC CFT component. The pilot project is being executed in 2 phases over an 18-month period, commencing in March 2019. The first phase is expected to be completed in March 2020. And the first phase, we call it development and testing. And the second phase, we call it rollout and implementation in the selected countries via a live deployment in a controlled environment for 6 months. So the development and testing will take approximately a year, from March this year into March next year. And immediately after, we're going to roll out an implementation, which we expect to take about 6 months. And it will be done under the regulation and the supervision of the central bank. The pilot countries we're looking at is St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, and Grenada. And the target participants would be licensed financial institutions and non-bank financial institutions, customers, merchants within the selected ECCU pilot countries. Now, the feature of the digital currency will be similar to the feature of physical currency. It will have legal status, because for it to be effective, it must have legal status. The law does not allow us to give it a legal status as yet, but machines are trained to ensure that this happens before it has go live. Also, it will reflect the current exchange rate of the EC dollar, which is 2.7 to $1. And it will be distributed by licensed banks and non-financial institutions in the ECCU. In some countries, what you had was the central bank distributing the currency directly to the citizens, but no. Currently, the ECCB only deals with licensed financial institutions, and that arrangement will remain. So the ECCB will provide the currency to the licensed institutions who will then provide it to the customer. So there will be that separation between the central bank and the customer, which currently exists as we speak. And the transactions will be facilitated via digital wallets or smart devices. And as we indicated, the cell phone is ubiquitous, and the cell phone penetration is over 100% in the ECCU countries. So almost everybody has more than one cell phone because we know we have different carriers. So therefore, to use a payment system that goes through a cell phone can add value. Currently, we are at the development stage, and this entailed, we partnered with Bit Inc., who is working alongside the ECCB and the associated stakeholders to undertake the design and development of the software that is required in the execution of the pilot. We also have some sub-component stages, the inception stage, which we have been through, where we had a consultative review of the proposed structure of the project involving pilot participants with a view to ensuring that all parties understand the needs and the expectations. Then we had the elaboration stage, which comprised of the analysis of the requirements and the required necessary architecture of the proposed system, also the identification of the principal risks and ways in which you can remedy those risks. Then we have the construction phase, which is currently happening as we speak. It comprises of coding and implementation of the application features, the delivery of the application, and the preparation for primary testing. The divisibility of the digital currency is expected to be consistent with fiat, and therefore will allow for the exact payment of any price. Now, the development of the digital currency will allow for two models, and this is where the financial inclusion comes in. The two models, one is a value-based model, where the DXCD, the currency, will be stored in a secure manner on a customer's smart device, and it would facilitate transfers without having to revert to a financial institution. So you should be able to download your wallet from your app store, and a friend can just send you money to your app. So you wouldn't need a commercial bank in there. So if your grandmother doesn't have an account and she wants money, you tell your niece to download this on grandma's app. Download this app on grandma's phone. And from that, you can send grandma $100. Well, you're generous, $50. And in that way, she would circumvent having to go to a financial institution to get money. But you also have the other component, the other model, which is the registered base model, where the customer holds digital currency on accounts at the licensed financial institution. So the licensed financial institution would be the one where the account is held. The advantage of this one is that if your phone gets lost, that account is with the licensed financial institution. So it will be easy for you to recover. But if it's on the value base, if your phone gets lost, it's a little difficult. I mean, the programmers are working ways in which you can recover if your phone gets lost for the value base. But for the registered base, it is easier to recover because the account is held with a financial institution, but just reflected on your phone. But we are having both models available. Okay? And so therefore there is a preliminary testing phase and the training phase, which is comprised of training the central bank project team and the agreed stakeholders to participate effectively in the pilot phase. In the pilot phase is where you have the live deployment where the digital currency operates alongside EC dollar with near instantaneous real-time processing and legal settlement finality. Also, in that phase, we want to have a demonstration of the KYC, the AML-CFT utilities as part of the digital payment system infrastructure, including greater transparency, reduced fragmentation, and the recording of the customer data centrally. So within that construct, we also have to see a manifestation of the KYC, AML-CFT component of the platform for the transaction to operate. And post-deployment, there's a post-deployment phase, which is after the 18 months in which we have to go and verify the project implementation against the accepted criteria and ensure that what took place was consistent with our expectation. Like we say, initially it's a pilot in the first instance, and subsequent to that, we will determine based on an evaluation whether or not we should go the full Monty, basically. It's an interesting project. It has been very engaging, and I think I want to accept. I feel a little proud to hear that we're the first, that we pioneering, we are the brave, and they say fortune favors the brave, so we go with that mantra. We forget about everything else, so we're hoping. And for us, it is important because, as Mr. Adams will have shown this morning, we are one central bank for 8 countries. And so we want a single financial space. Currently, it is difficult for us to move money between the 8 countries because the 8 countries have different finance laws. And so for the digital currency presents itself as a solution for us to move funds between the 8 countries frictionless and seamlessly, basically. On the CSN front, what we want to say is that our regional proximity combined with our international trade and travel should have made it easier for us to settle transactions among each other. However, differences in currencies and exchange rates meant that we have to rely on a payment and settlement system that is oblivious to our historical relationships. Currently, for every payment to take place, it has to have 3 components. It has to have a messaging component, it has to have a clearing component, and it has to have a settlement component. Now, certain countries, certain institutions have focused on different aspects of those components. Companies will focus on the messaging component. That is where SWIFT comes in, naturally. Those who will involve in the payment system. Some institutions will focus on the clearance component. And you have chips, you have FedWire, and then you have the settlement, which is where the banks come in. What we find, the regional transactions, most of us use the SWIFT messaging platform to settle our transactions. Most of us do that, which is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications Network. It's a messaging network relating to where financial transactions are securely sent between participants. The volume and the value of transactions on a global scale for which SWIFT messages must be dispatched are enormous. It therefore means that the security features for this global secure messaging network must be constantly upgraded to protect against unethical intrusion. And this is quite expensive, as we at the central banks are finding out every year the SWIFT fees go up all the time. And for us to send, sometimes you ask yourself, if in a micro level, I have to pay my neighbor, he sells some coconuts to me, I have to go and pay somebody way up there, give that person way up there the money to take it back to him. That sounds ludicrous on a micro level. So why is it acceptable on a macro level? Why is it that for us to pay our next door neighbor, we have to send the money to a foreign country who now has to send it back to him? So if we think of it that way, we have to find a way around this mechanism. We have, with SWIFT, you have countries out there who are trying to move around it because payment system, if it is that you always have to pay this person to pay somebody else, that person have control over you. Okay? And this is the political dynamics that we're seeing. Countries realize how important they are. They can apply pressure on certain countries, not by invading them with guns, but by cutting them off certain payment systems, certain infrastructures. And the payment system is one avenue that people are noticing that countries are using to keep countries out, to put pressure on countries. So for us, the international political dynamics have entered the payment space, and certain countries, for political reasons, are contemplating developing an alternative to SWIFT. So there is a legitimate question. So there is a question, do we have options for SWIFT within our area? Is it only SWIFT we use, or should we explore other options? A CSN provides an alternative for that, and we embrace it. For us, the CSN can be cheaper because we foresee an escalation of fees going forward as countries try, as those payments, financial market infrastructure make themselves Teflon to intrusion, to hacks. Okay, so we see the CSN as a viable alternative, something that can be relied on, because in the event, God forbid, the messaging system goes down, what are our options? Can we not pay our neighbors now, given that that particular system that we use is no longer exists? So we should look for redundancy, we should look for alternatives. And we see CSN, maybe not necessarily to stand on its own, but as an alternative to what we currently have. And thirdly, it is not regional based. Thirdly, the messaging system that we have is not regional based and controlled. And political and other considerations can influence the smoothness by which payments are executed. However, in assessing the operations of the CSN and the manner in which it is employed, we need to give consideration to the following, and I will say, determining settlement finality. In the payment system, this is an issue. When is a transaction finally settled? So when we think of the CSN, we need to factor that in. Also, is there a possibility of introducing a central counterparty? Because we would have bilateral and multilateral relations. Is there one institution that can stand to guarantee the transaction of every government within the region? Perhaps the CDB can see it as playing that role, a central counterparty in which all payments, all transfers are directed to that particular institution, and they themselves will settle the countries. And also, another area on the payment system is we have moved from a deferred net settlement to a real-time gross settlement. And CSN, from my vantage point, is appearing to be deferred net settlement. In a retail gross settlement, you have bilaterals, where it is seen as less risky if you have a bilateral settlement. But in the CSN, we're looking at deferred net settlement, which is not considered to be the standards within which payments should be conducted. So what I want to say is, I have no doubt that there are numerous other concerns that the payment system experts will bring to bear in looking at the CSN. So I am aware that it's at the conceptual stage now. However, I do not think it is too early to bring in the payment system experts for us to get a full understanding of how things can work. I thank you.